What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a blessed day. On today's video, we're going to be installing a lowering kit on the YAMAHA YZ250FX. This process should be the same for pretty much any modern dirt bike, so if you're looking to do something similar, hopefully this video will help you. In my case, we're using the ZETA rear lowering link, and then we're using the ZETA fork lowering kit, which replaces the spring perch and adds a little bump stop piece inside the front fork, lowering the bike roughly 1 inch, 30 millimeters, something like that. Same thing in the rear, it's about 1 inch, 30 millimeter. There is a couple different options when you order the kit. You actually can go lower than that. In my case, I opted to go the 1 inch just to touch a little bit better when I'm out there on some of the rougher terrain where I've been a little unstable in the past. So let's take a quick look at the parts, the tools that we're going to need to do the job. We'll get right into tearing this thing down and get this kit installed. Let's do it. Alright, so here's our kit. Very simple. We have our lowering link. That looks like that. There's the needle bearings inside there. And then there's also a couple seals. And then for the forks, you can see we have our spring seat. And then the little bump stop pieces that will get slid down in there. Alright guys, so these are the tools we're going to be using in today's video. Pretty basic stuff. We got some wrenches here, we got some sockets. I have my 3/8 impact. I definitely recommend using an impact. It goes a long way in breaking free these extremely slippery parts. It's not necessary, but it'll make your life a lot easier. Strap wrench, I don't always have to use this, but it is nice to have on hand. Help grab some of these slippery parts. We have our ratchet wrench, not necessary, but that's what I'll be using. Torque wrench, pretty necessary because you really need to torque down that front end and part of the rear end when we put everything back together. So definitely want a torque wrench. Mallet, we have a punch, that's going to help us take the front wheel off. A pick and some circlip pliers, we're going to need that to remove a couple clips inside of the forks. Your fork wrench, you really got to have this. This is specific for your bike, so just make sure you order the right one. Same thing with this guy. This removes the damping assembly from the top of the fork. You got to make sure you get the right one for your bike. In my case, it's got that little cutout for the bleeder, but definitely need that. If you don't have that, just don't even bother. Fluid, it's a good idea to have some fluid on hand. You're not going to be able to save everything, and a lot of times when you open these things up, the fluid is kind of crap anyway. So have a little bit of fluid on hand to refill everything. And then most importantly, a crap ton of rags, because this is an extremely messy process and there's going to be fluid everywhere. So some rags, paper towels, something like that, have them on the ready because it's going to get messy. All right, now that we've seen the parts, we know the tools, let's start tearing into this thing. We're going to remove the brakes, the fork guards, front wheel, and then drop the forks from the triple trees, and we can start digging into these things. Let's do it. All right, first things first, the wheel. Got this brake line removed. Hub off, our hub bolt. Now we can get these loose. Easy peasy. And then we got 2 more 10 mils holding the caliper on. Take our punch. Put our wheel out. Got 3 Allen head bolts. in my case, I want to remove the air filter assembly. Just makes it easier to get to those clamp bolts. Okay, now we just wiggle this guy out of here. There we go. Same thing on this side. There we go. So now that we got the forks off, let's get them on the workbench and start going through the process of taking them apart. All right, before we start tearing anything apart, we want to count our clicks so we know where everything was before we tore everything apart. So we're just going to turn these clockwise, counting the clicks, and then I've always been taught you're supposed to then back everything off before taking the fork apart. Let's see what we got here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Wow. Okay, now we'll back that out. Flip this sucker around, check the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so first things first, we got to get this sucker off so we can pull the inner assembly out of here, and that will also allow us to dump out a bunch of the fluid. So let's get set up in the vise, and then we will do that first. Then we start to pull out the internal assembly. Don't want to tighten this too much here. Oh, I got it. So just a little pop with my fist was enough to crack it loose. Okay, so as you can see, now the lower portion can pull up. So now we just tip this sucker over, let that fluid drain out, and then we can start working on the next step, which is going to be pulling this out, as well as part off the bottom, and then pulling the inner assembly out. So let's drain the fluid, and then we'll jump on that. All right, we'll be back in a couple minutes. I'm gonna let this drip out of here so we don't make a huge mess, and then we'll go from there. All right, guys, so for the next part, we got this bottom bolt here. This, in my case, is a 17 mil. So we're gonna hit that with the impact. So now you can see that's loosened up from the body here. And if you press down, it exposes the shaft. So that's where this tool comes in with the fork on this side. So you just press down, then you put that fork in there. And now you can see that that's holding that up for you. Now we can pull that right up and off. Then you can pull out your dampening rod. Very careful not to ding, dent, or bend that. Now we can push back down and take this off. So now we'll just loosen this back up. I had just temporarily tightened this to stop any dripping. Let that drop down. The spring and everything can just stay right in there. So now this is the first part that we're replacing. So this is the spring perch. And as you can see, the new one is shorter. So what it allows the spring to do is sit lower, dropping you by that much. In the next step, there's also a bushing that we're going to put in, which is this guy. And you'll see how that goes in next. So the first thing we need to do is get the old spring perch off. And to do that, we need to get this C-clip off. And this little bushing piece here, and then that can slide off of there. I found the easiest way to get that circlip off is just to take a pair of circlip pliers, get in the gap, and then just take a screwdriver, pry out as you're opening it up. That will come off. That bushing piece will come off. Now what we need to do is get the dampening assembly out. Drop this guy in there. If you use an impact, sometimes you can hold this good enough. There we go. So now to get this out, you just pull up on it, and then that whole assembly comes right out of there. So we'll put that down here on the rag for now. Get this fluid out of here. All right, so next step, got to get this portion off the end of this. There's special clamps for grabbing this. I don't have those, so I'm going to show you guys how I do it. And as long as you're careful, you should be able to do this without damaging anything. All right, so I start just taking a vise and those same 2 pieces of rubber hose. I'm just going to use those to gently grab this shaft. In my experience, these aren't typically that tight. Sometimes you can get them off with your fingers. So there you go, just like that. That was pretty loose. Now that that's off, we can pull the whole assembly down through. It's a good idea to take a little bit of thread tape and put it around these threads just to protect the seals as you're pulling this through. you don't go ahead and saw blade them. So now we're just going to gently push that up through. You'll feel it kind of loosen up. Now you've got that shaft out of there. Now for this next step, this is the first part that we're going to be putting in from the kit. It's our little blue bushing. Very straightforward. We're going to drop it right down that hole. So you kind of just eyeball it. Drop it in there and get it started. I can't really show you because it'll fall out. Now we're just going to take, in this case, a wooden dowel. And we're going to push this all the way into the bottom. And you'll feel it stop. Now that blue bushing is all the way down at the bottom of that hole. And that's going to work as like a bump stop. There's a little spring down there as well. So now we have our shaft. We can go right back in with that. Carefully. Now we pull that shaft back in. And there we go. We are good to go. So now before we put this cap back on, we need to get some fluid in here. And then we can put this cap right back on and put everything we took off back together, including the new spring perch. So let me get some fluid together and we'll fill this sucker up. This is fill number 1. There's 2 different fills we're gonna have to do. Okay. So for us, in the Yamaha, this inside cavity is going to hold right under 7 ounces. Okay, and then there's a bleeding procedure that's going to push some of that back out. Okay, that's that. Give it a sec to let some of the air bubbles come out. There we go. Now we're going to take this portion . There we go. Okay, that is that. Gently pressing down. Hear that? That's it, pressing that air out. It says to just go a little bit at a time. And you'll feel it change. There we go. It'll start to spit out a little bit of fluid. Oh yeah. Okay, that's it for this part. Now we got to put everything that we took off back on, which is our spring perch. That goes on just like that. And now we got to put that circlip and bushing piece back on. pushing. Clip. Make sure that's seated. Take our thread tape off. Screw this part back on. Okay, snug that up. And then we are good to slide this right back into the main assembly. Okay, now for the next part, we're going to slide this back down through the spring. We're going to temporarily tighten this up. We still got to put fluid back in here. So we're tightening it up just enough so we can do what we got to do down in here. Use our fork again. Hold that baby. Now we can go back in with our dampening rod. And just make sure that should bounce ever so slightly when you push down on it. Now we can screw this guy on. Clasp that on as tight as I can. Well, not as tight as I can, but tight. Just like that. Now we can pull this back out. Tighten this into the body. Like that. Flip this sucker back over. Now we can loosen this back up and then get our next batch of fluid in. Alright, so for the fluid, in my case, the kit says to use a little bit less fluid because you're taking up less space. In my case, it's like 11.6 ounces. And again, this changes bike to bike and how you have your suspension set up and whatnot. For me, I'm going to go 11 ounces on this portion. Now we can take our fluid and pour it back in here. Okay, bring this up. Now we can really snug this up when we get it back in the bike. For now, I'll just do that. Carefully. Okay, now we can get this baby back in there. Okay, going 85 foot-pounds on the front nut, front wheel nut. All right, guys, front is done. All right, let's jump into the rear. All right, so first thing we need to do is get this roller off because there's a bolt back here that we need to get to. So there's a 12 mil on the back side of this. You can see what you're doing. Then a 10 mil on the front. Okay, you can see the nut came off. Okay, and then we had a washer. See what size this is. Okay, that's a 19. Oh man. Oh. Holy moly, that was tight. Okay, there's a washer. Got that off. Now I guess we'll jump to the other side and loosen up the other one. And we have a 19 here. Got that off. There we go. There it is. So let's take a look at the new one. That's the new one. It looks like it has some sort of plastic covering the needle bearings. See if we can get this bushing to come out nicely, which it did. That's wonderful. All right. Now while we're in here, we're just going to add a little bit of grease. Same thing here. It's actually pretty dry. very nice. Okay, so now we have 2 seals. Got a little bit of grease on those. There we go. That goes right over that. Enough to press those in. I'm going to slide that right back up into there. There we go. And get our washer and our lock nut back on. I'm not going to crank it home yet. Now on this side, same thing. We have our washer and our nut. We just lift the chain. We're at 52. On the other side, 59. Okay. All right, let's see here. 58, 50, beep, beep, 9. Okay, know where we're getting torque wrench on that, so it is what it is. All right, guys, we did it. Front to rear, she is lowered. Let me go get my gear on. We'll drop this sucker down, see how it feels, and take it for a rip, and see if it feels any different. Let's do it. we did about 1.77 miles. 10-minute ride, not bad. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for the ZETA drop kit on the YZ250FX. The steps in this video should work on pretty much any modern dirt bike. They vary slightly, but the steps are going to be pretty much exactly the same. So overall, the ride quality wasn't really affected. To be honest, I didn't notice a difference whatsoever. I just felt a lot more stable ripping around all those rocks and trees, where in the past, that's where I've gotten into some trouble in those tighter spots, not being able to drop my foot down. So yeah, super happy with it. The parts should run you about 300 bucks if you want to do this to your bike. And the job is probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours worth of work. Really not bad, and the end result is just amazing here. I'm super happy I did this. Alright guys, well that's going to wrap it up for today's video. Hopefully this will help you if you're doing a similar drop on your dirt bike. We have a lot more content like this coming, so if you're into this kind of thing, drop a like, subscribe, and we will catch you guys on the next one.